If you were there this morning, I'm still Dexter Thillien, and I'm still a lead analyst for technology at the Economist Intelligence Unit, which means that I still don't write for the newspaper, and I still don't have the right timer, but that's fine. We'll make do with it. There we go, it's there. So I'm going to do something slightly different, because I'm going to go very, very high level, and I will explain to you why I'll do it that way. So, is it working? There we are. So digital transformation. So I'm going to start with the macro environment. You might ask, why are you starting with the macro environment? It will make sense in about 5 minutes' time. So this is our latest forecast, with a caveat that they change on a very, very, very regular basis, because if there is one buzzword about the macroeconomy and geopolitics right now, is uncertainty. I won't go into the details why. You can probably all guess why, but this is where we are. So the global economy, we forecast it to expand by under 2% in 2025. This is very, very low by historical standards. In the last few years, we were closer to 3.5, even 4%, driven by emerging markets. So if you look at that map that we do every month in terms of a global outlook, the more purple you are, the closer to zero you are. And quite frankly, if you look at North America and Western Europe, it's not looking too great, and also Japan to some level. But even countries like China, which are kind of below the historical average. So the global economy not doing specifically well. There's some kind of hotspots, especially around Africa, but this is kind of where we are. And so why do I think the macro situation is important? This is kind of the same data, but shown on a region-by-region basis. So you could see 2024, about 2.5, 2.3% growth. As I say, 1.9% in 2025. Every region not doing as well this year as it did last year, Africa being the exception, and we even forecast a recession in the US, which is why North America is having that major, major gap. So why do I think this is important, and why do I talk about the macro situation? You're living in that world. You're living in our world. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. It is there. The macroeconomic situation is not as strong as it probably could be. There are more uncertainty. There are geopolitical tensions between different regions. Why is it important when we think about digital transformation? I think it is important because all of you here, all companies, all business leaders, you're going to be focusing, in my view, on three things. The first one, you're going to want to become more efficient. The second one, you're going to focus much more on costs that you already did. And the third one, you're going to look at value even more that you already did. And I think those three things, in my view, and you could disagree with me, but in my view, these three things all drive greater technological adoption. And we've seen it before. And the most recent time we've seen it was in 2020. So why 2020? You all remember COVID. You don't want to remember it, neither do I, but it happened. What happened in terms of COVID, in terms of growth? So this is kind of a chart I use on a regular basis in terms of looking at cloud drivers and kind of a yearly growth of cloud of the three major hyperscalers, which represent 70-80% of the market. So AWS, one of our sponsors, and also Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure. And you can see, if you look at that 2 years COVID period, if you want to put it that way, there was a boost. And we could see major growth, up to 50% for some of those players, but kind of very, very high growth level on those companies. Why? Because with COVID, the economic situation wasn't great either, for the reason that we all know, and people started to do far more digital transformation. One thing I remember is that in 2019, I did a piece of work when we surveyed UK company about their plan for digital transformation. And we had about 10% of them saying, we have no plan, we're not interested, we're not going to do it. And every time I showed the data, I was like, this is a company that's not going to exist in 5 years' time. And I still think this is the case, maybe even less than 5 years' time. So COVID, a boost. Then we have a bit of a lull. And then the second part, a lull, we're still talking double-digit growth of multi-billion dollars companies. So it's lull within reason. Then the second part I started in late 2022. You know what happened, ChatGPT. This is the AI boost. So kind of AI, we're starting to see not the level of growth that we were seeing before, but still a pretty high level of growth. Again, 30% or more for the top companies. So I do think we're in a situation right now, especially with the kind of infrastructure spending that is being done on AI and on many, many other things. Whereas infrastructure in there is just a matter of kind of building those applications and putting digital transformation on top. So I do think that you probably can't think of the economic situation as a pure negative. I think it's going to give opportunities for you to change your business, do things differently, and technology is going to be very, very important in order to do so. So let's kind of look in terms of where we are. You would have seen that similar map in the morning. This is to do with cloud as opposed to AI. I think cloud is kind of a good proxy to kind of figure out what people are doing and how people are implementing or adopting digital transformation in general. I know digital transformation is much more than cloud, but I see it as a good proxy. So the data is under 50% of companies in the EU are using cloud, which is pretty good, better than AI, which was at 13.5%, but still under 50%. So probably could do better. There's obviously some kind of differences in terms of regions and in terms of country rather, and also in terms of companies. So as with AI, the companies in the Nordic are well over 70%. Not surprisingly, they tend to be ahead of the rest in terms of that. Ireland is also doing quite well. It's probably because it has a lot of multinational living there. And you've also got countries not doing too badly. So the darker blue you are, the better you do. The lighter blue you are, the worse you do. And this is kind of the same in terms of the size of the company. So larger companies are almost at 80% adoption. But if you're talking much smaller company, you're going down to the 40% and even lower than that. So two ways to look at it. You could say under 50%, not brilliant. But the way I would look at it is there's still a lot of room to grow. And I think we should kind of see it that way in terms of what do we get to that next 50% till we get to almost everybody adopting cloud in Europe. And if you look at sectors, it's a very similar chart that we are with AI. So again, technology companies are using the most cloud. This is not surprising, at least I hope it is not. 80%. It actually looks quite low, but we'll see. The methodology sometimes of Eurostat can be a bit like that. But I think what's more interesting for our purposes is that, as with AI, both construction and manufacturing are under the EU average and under 50%. So about 38% from construction and about 45% from manufacturing. Again, you can see it in two ways. You can be slightly pessimistic and say only just over a third and under half of companies in those sectors are kind of using cloud, and cloud is kind of the basic stone and kind of the basic step. You should do more. You can go and say, we still got about over 60% of companies, over 55% of companies on the manufacturing side, which still needs to do cloud adoption. So there's kind of a lot of room to grow, lots of adoption to come in, and a lot of things to be doing over the coming years. And this is how I kind of want to see it. The same way with AI. I think similar with cloud digital transformation. I don't think it's an issue of those companies not wanting to do digital transformation. It's more of an issue of many companies not really knowing how they're going to do digital transformation or to use their data and to do different things. So it's about making them implement that journey and making sure that they get to the stage that they want. So a few final words for me. Again, key takeaways. Again, difficult macroeconomic situation. I think it's going to last for maybe a few years. Geopolitical uncertainty, trade tension, tariff tension. I think in my view that would probably help the demand for technology solution. They might have some negative consequences in many things, but as I said, as during the pandemic, when we've seen quite a high growth of new technological adoption, I think we're going to be doing the same because you all want to stay more competitive, and this is one of the ways that you're going to stay competitive. Cloud adoption is higher than AI adoption, maybe not a surprise, but still under half of companies in the EU are using the technology, which means that there's still a lot of room to grow. And similarly, in terms of what we've seen with AI this morning, in terms of sector, construction and manufacturing are lagging behind the rest, which means that the room for growth is also pretty positive to make sure that all those companies are doing what they should be doing. And this is it for me. Thank you for listening. And I think I'm introducing Guts to talk about his own perspective in terms of integration of platform AI. So Guts, please come on stage.
Thank you.